Welcome to episode 28 of the Avocado Gamescast, the spookiest gaming podcast on the web. I'm Vampire Merve, and today we will be discussing outsider art in video games. But first, let us meet the horrifying creatures who are joining me today. First, he's a wolfman. It's Wolfman Jew.
Hello. Wearing a sexy costume of myself, it's Wolfman Jew.
Next, he's a mad scientist. Its science is bad.
Hello, it's me.
And finally, he's a Kappa. It's the Kappa.
I just want to make that noise like they do in The Ring. You know, the little kid. I don't know how to do that. That's it.
I think you can only do
Ring
that if
Kid.
you're...
Ring Kid. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to drop the accent because I don't think I can keep that up for the entire podcast. I'm also glad I had you guys because I didn't have to like change your names to make them sound spooky.
Yeah, you got
This
pretty
is like
spooky.
This is like
That's
the right
the-
crew to have for the HallowEAn episode.
Yeah, that's the sad thing about having the gimmick name month for the avocado is Wolfman Jew's already a Halloween-y name.
Yeah, you can't really make it spookier.
Yeah, it's a real curse.
What's spookier than one Wolfman Jew? 3 Wolfman Jews. That's
how
how
you do it.
spooky.
Our bar mitzvahs are quite deadly.
Like, I do really love that Werewolf Bar Mitzvah song. That
It's so
we saw
good.
like 10 seconds of on 30 Rock.
Well, they actually made a full version. I think Donald Glover is on part of it. It's great.
Okay, I need to seek this out. If it's on YouTube, we're gonna throw it
It
in
is.
the Linkdump. Okay, great. We're gonna throw this in Linkdump so y'all can watch some Werewolf Bar Mitzvah.
Good stuff.
So, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Well, as can be expected.
Yeah, you're ready to go trick or treating because that's what adults do. They trick or treat.
Yeah, totally. I'm not creeping everybody out by trick or treating when old. It's just yeah, totally normal. No, I'm just going to be holed up in my apartment and probably go
I
do
thought we
something
told you to
with
stop
people.
coming to this neighborhood, Science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just probably drink with people as usual. What is to be done on Halloween, I guess.
Yeah, when you're an adult, Halloween becomes a drinking holiday. That's what I've realized.
Yeah, it's not bad, but you know. it's,
Well, actually, now that I'm doing volunteer work at a school, I'm actually probably going to wear a costume for the first time in years.
Oh, nice.
have you decided what costume you're going to go with?
Columbo.
Oh, good choice. That's a stellar choice.
Yeah.
Nice. He's
I've got
a
a
great
trench coat.
detective.
Oh, he's the best.
Yeah, you're gonna be doing a whole lot of just one more thing, throughout the evening.
Hot take. Columbo is one of the greatest icons in American fiction.
Oh, that's not a hot take for me. I like that take. I'm gonna take it. Lukewarm.
Lukewarm
Yeah.
take. It's an acceptable take. I'm down with this take. I haven't even seen Columbo. I've only seen like clips, but I think I should sit down and watch it one day and just like binge it.
You should. It's very pleasant. It's a
Mellow.
good yes. It's a good mellow show to just kind of like. It's a good Sunday afternoon show.
Great. I think I need another good like ironing show, which I know sounds a little condescending. But I need a show that I can just sort of like watch while I'm ironing my clothes.
Yeah.
Because usually I watch like shitty anime, and I'm getting kind of tired of shitty anime. And watching
Sure.
good anime, it's not something that I can concentrate on while I'm ironing. So I think I need a show that's well made, but that I can still be appreciated if I'm not paying if I'm only paying 95% attention.
Yeah, that's Columbo. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can swing it with that. It's a shame that it's not on Netflix anymore.
Yeah, they took it out of Netflix and then they took it out of Amazon Prime.
Yeah, shitty.
Don't tell me they give it to Hulu, because I'm gonna throw something to give to Hulu.
No, I checked, and no, it's not even on Hulu. It's part of the thing is that it really is like, I don't want to say it's an acquired taste, but it's not. It's definitely not like a. It can't have gotten like super high marks on Netflix ratings wise.
Probably not.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Procedurals sort of have procedurals don't lend themselves super well to the binge watch model, unfortunately.
I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure I'd agree with that, but I would say like I think that, and this is where I'm going to get on the Wolfman Jew soapbox. That what makes Columbo great is that he is very much like a counterpart to the like violent, deranged anti-heroes of fiction. He's just a good, blue-collar, super kind, incredibly affable, but also still very smart and very devious American detective. And I think, like, it's that maybe some people find that not cool. And it isn't. I mean, Columbo, what's great about him is he isn't cool.
Yeah, he's not very cool. My mom liked him very much, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah, he does seem like the kind of person. Sorry, go ahead.
It's not a binge show. That's what I wanted to say. It's just 100% not a binge show. An episode lasts like an hour, so you can't just go like 14 episodes in a day or whatever. You just kind of watch one and like, okay, I think I'm good.
Okay, so speaking of affable blue-collar heroes,
Mario!
That's exactly where I was going with that. I've been playing Mario plus Rabbids.
Yeah, okay.
Which has been a fun time.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Sorry. I finished it a couple weeks ago, but yeah, it's fantastic.
What did you think? You said it was fantastic, but what else did you think?
Oh yeah, well I actually wrote a review of it on Source Gaming, but one of the things that I really like is how... Okay, so you and I have talked about this before. The Rabbids are terrible.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mario is not terrible. But what I like about it is that it's a game that I don't think... For all like the XCOM ripoff stuff, it really is a game that draws from both. And I think that they both make themselves good. Like the Mario stuff improves it. I think the Rabbids stuff improves it. It's really like almost kind of a perfect crossover, something that takes two different things that you wouldn't think would work together, but then manages to make something that can kind of stand on its own merits apart from them.
Yeah, and like just to be specific, I think having the Mario characters in the Mushroom Kingdom sort of grounds the Rabbids, and it kind of cuts the
extreme.
Yeah, the extremes of them. And having the Rabbids around sort of adds this really fun element of chaos to the game, and it plays out with some of the effects like characters that burn and run around the map when you light them on fire, or explosions causing unpredictable outcomes, things like that. They play out really well. They complement the Rabbids' sort of chaotic random energy really well.
Mm-hmm.
It also has fantastic music and it just is really nice presentation.
Yeah, it's a really well put together strategy XCOM-like game, and in some ways I actually prefer it to XCOM because the way the gameplay is, it takes the essential components of XCOM, the hiding behind cover, positioning, firing, but it strips sort of what feels unnecessary. For example, the probabilities to hit are either 0, 50, or 100. So there's none of that. There's a 95% chance I missed kind of bitterness to it. So it feels like it took out a lot of this unnecessary stuff. It took out a lot of the unnecessary metagame that I don't think XCOM handles very well as well. So it takes everything that's enjoyable about XCOM and strips out what's unnecessary, and then adds this really nice, fun layer of of
physicality, maybe.
yeah, physicality, like with the team jump mechanic and the way you dash through enemies. You can, on one turn, move some characters from one end of the map to the other just by exploiting the movement mechanics. So it adds this physicality, it adds this, the presentation sort of adds this sense of humor that to what would otherwise be like a really dour game like XCOM. So I've been really enjoying it. I'm in the middle of the fourth world right now. I'm not very good at this game. I usually make it through each fight. I never get perfect on anything. I usually make it through the skin of my teeth. Today I discovered, while I was playing it on my bus ride home from work, I discovered that you can still beat a level if all your characters die in that level, provided that the enemies die on the same turn.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what happened was I just had Mario left. I hit an enemy. I hit one of those. The enemies with the boards they carry behind their back. I forget what they're called, but
smashers.
The smashers. So Mario was down to like 50 health. I smashed a smasher with a hammer, which killed him. But he was next to another smasher who didn't get down to 0 health. So after Mario killed that last enemy, there's a quota you had to kill 9. After Mario killed that 9th enemy, the other smasher ran up to him and smashed him. But I'd already killed the 9th smasher, so it immediately took me to a victory screen as soon as Mario died. And it showed, upon completion, good with all my characters with a red X over them. So, yeah.
Just for those who haven't played it, a smasher is kind of like the big, heavy, fat guy enemy. Its gimmick is that it gets enraged whenever you shoot it, and so it runs toward whoever shot him and can do a second attack on top of the attack he normally does. So the way you kind of want to defeat them is by setting up kind of like, you kind of want to flank them on 3 sides and just have like everyone kind of kill him all at once.
Yeah. The other way to attack them is to use characters with lots of ranged weaponry. They're really hard to deal with if you have multiple smashers on the field. But you can sort of, if you have 1 or 2, you can sort of corral them in an effective way. So that's what I've been playing. Mario plus Rabbids. Been really enjoying it.
Sounds neat. I when I get a Switch, I'm definitely going to check it out. Although, to be said, I do love those XCOM elements that you don't like. So, but it does sound fun.
Yeah, I mean, even if you like the elements that they've taken out from XCOM, I think you'll still find something to enjoy in it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of a puzzle game as much as it is a tactical strategy game, so
I can see that.
So it's kind of its own flavor, along with it, not just like a kind of a dumbed down.
Yeah.
Or
not
streamlined.
to mention that it has actual puzzles along the way too. So you get that good mixture. So Science, what have you been playing?
I've been playing 3 games, the same games basically the last time, but I finished Cuphead. I finished SteamWorld Dig 2, and I am 1/4, maybe 1/3 of the way through Divinity 2. So just kind of like working through these games slowly.
So tell us about SteamWorld. How's that?
Oh yeah, that game is just. I think it's the perfect game that it can be. Like it's not some. A game that revolutionized anything, and it's not a game that like probably not many people will be like, oh, it's my top 3 games of the year, but what it does perfectly. It has the perfect controls, I think. It has the perfect upgrade system. It like slowly gradually makes you better throughout the game. Like it keeps giving you these tiny little rewards that keep you going, and there's always something in your crosshairs. So like, okay, next thing I'm going is this little upgrade that lets me do this and this, and and then it slowly gives you better movement options, and more health and shields and all of that stuff, and the the skill system is very clever. It's if you ever played Bastion, it has the same system as in Bastion, so you don't like lock in your points to anything in your skill system. You just kind of can take your points and give it to some skills, and then you can switch them around, and it doesn't cost anything. So it's perfect for trying things out. It's just really enjoyable. It took me about 10 hours, 12 hours to finish it.
It's a pretty good time for a Metroidvania.
Yeah, pretty good time. It's like you're constantly enjoying it. I don't think it couldn't be better. I'm struggling to see any cons here. It has great music and great atmosphere. It looks very pretty. It's better, definitely more robust in many aspects, like in skills and in length even, I think, than the first one. It's just a better version of the first one. And if you have if you have time to maybe it's a bit like like an ironing game, like a game that you kind of I want to listen to a podcast, and also I want to play a very good game that doesn't it has a story, but it's not very engaging. It's more about the gameplay and the skill progression and so forth, and the money progression. Then you should totally give this a shot. It's the best one of those I've played in a very long time. I had a blast playing it with something going in the background. That's not a slight on the game. I think that I really need games like that to just relax. Because Cuphead really stressed me out, so this was a good counterbalance to that game. And it was a real blast to play through, and I really recommend it to anyone that wants to have a game with which they can relax, and maybe if you're playing a lot of Destiny 2 or whatever, then maybe you should play this to just kind of wind down. Also a good weekend game if you're relaxing on a weekend. So yeah, highly recommended. Highly recommended. I can't see any faults in it. It's good.
Nice.
Lovely.
Yeah, so Kappa, what have you been playing?
A little bit of everything. I finished up Halo 4, which I don't think anybody wants to hear about. Started Destiny, but in the meantime, in between those two, I played some Shadows of War, which I hated. I absolutely hated it.
Oh,
It doesn't have anything to do with the microtransactions, none of that stuff. It's just a boring game.
Did you play the first one? Sorry.
Yeah, I liked the first one a lot. I thought it had some cool ideas, but I wasn't 100% into it. I finished it up and enjoyed what I liked, but this one just kind of feels like it really falls in love with creating systems on top of systems on top of systems that have all these little random elements applied to it that don't ever really add up to anything fun. Got really frustrated with it throughout Act 2, which is kind of misleading because Act 2 is probably, I would guess, maybe half the game. So I just kind of wasn't really enjoying where it was going. The layer of loot I don't think is really well done. It's level loot, so you end up just kind of constantly replacing stuff. You have to do quests to use it, but levels come so fast that there's really not much point in keeping a sword. There's really no stats other than what the sword does, like in terms of light stuff on fire or makes things, flee or bleed or stuff like that. It's not like one sword does 15 damage, the other does 50. It's all just the same. And and there's different tiers, so there's epic and legendary and whatever loot, but it's all just kind of thrown at you. It's not a good loot system. It's not fun to deal with. The orcs themselves have somehow like better personalities, but are more boring than the first one. They're constantly coming at you with the same orcs, and they don't really ever. I don't know. All in all, it's a bad game. I'm really disappointed by it.
Shame.
My plan was to get through it between Halo and Destiny, and it's just I just can't. I actually uninstalled it about, I don't know, probably about 2 or 3 days ago. I was just really, really bummed out that I had to do that. I'm hoping that maybe some DLC or something comes around to fix it.
Oh man, I laugh a little bit because I didn't expect such a scathing review of this game.
Yeah, I mean, I thought worst case scenario I'd like it okay enough to you know plow through it, but I mean everything about it, just walking away from it and just thinking, man, I enjoyed the first one. There was a lot to it. It was an interesting take on Lord of the Rings. You know, Lord of the Rings games have always kind of struggled with, well, we can't let you play the story of, you know, Aragorn because everybody knows that. So instead, here's like what they did in was the RPG First Age, or there's that other one that kind of came out around the time with the movies where it's like you're the distraction force, or all the other
and you're still a dwarf and an elf and a human.
It's always like, here I am with not Gimli going through, you know.
My name is not Gimli.
They did a lot in this one to just kind of just totally ignore the lore of Lord of the Rings. She loves a woman.
That freaked me out a little bit when I was watching it.
But I mean, like I've read a lot about, you know, people saying like the game's kind of like grappling with, you know, slavery issues and all stuff. And I don't know. I didn't really feel any of that while I was playing it. Salimbrabor, I don't know how to pronounce his name.
The
elf ghost. He's kind of going evil, and like you're basically like kind of having to keep him in check the whole time. He's inside your body, using you as kind of like his vessel. But I mean, he's basically also the only reason you have the powers you have. So it's this kind of like weird relationship between the two. But his evilness is basically kind of proving his undoing as he struggles with. Kind of a spoiler. I mean, this literally happens in the intro of the game, not even in the game itself. But he creates another One Ring, which is just the dumbest thing.
That's pretty dumb. That's pretty dumb.
Why would you do that?
I don't know.
That's a lot of bad things, but that's not great. But have you been like also encountering a lot of microtransaction stuff?
No. Here's why. I use Cheat Engine, and
oh, that's good. Sure.
Like almost like as like a point of pride, I just cheated myself 1 million silver or whatever it is in the game, and just bought myself the packs because I was really curious what was in them, because it doesn't really define it well. Honestly, in game, it's just kind of like, buy a silver pack for a chance at, you know, it just says a chance at legendaries. I was like, okay, cool.
What chance? Like, what's the probability?
Gambling.
And so I bought the silver one, and it is literally the same leveled loot that the orcs that you kill drop. It's just 2 of them. So but now there's gold packs that, like, I think I got like one from like, I don't know, like pre-ordering or something. The gold packs seem to have guaranteed legendaries and also like legendary orcs, which I've heard is what you need to beat the game. I got a buddy who's stuck with it, and he actually wished he did quit because he said the entire final act is one of the most infuriating things he's ever dealt with.
Yeah, I've heard that it's a bit of a grind, boring grind.
So I'm hoping they come around and fix it. I mean, you know, I feel like Warner Brothers has kind of found their niche in these type of fighting games that they do. The combat's really fun. You know, the Nemesis system is really cool. But I mean, every game has their gimmick, right? So Mad Max had the car, liked it, that was good with it. Batman kind of has the weird, you know, detective mode type stuff going on. Okay, I like it. But for as cool as the Nemesis system is, it's got to go somewhere. And the answer isn't a Metal Gear style FOB. You guys ever play Metal Gear 5?
Yeah.
That type of multiplayer to me is exactly what I don't like. So
I think that this system could really like be used in other games, but I haven't seen a lot of it being used anywhere else, which is kind of a bummer. And the only place that I've seen being used, kind of, is the XCOM expansion that came out recently, and that's it.
Yeah.
Weird.
What I wish this game would have took. I mean, obviously, it took lots of cues from Assassin's Creed. I mean, just it's obvious, right?
Yeah, like the piling on of systems upon systems. It sounds a lot like the problem with Assassin's Creed 3.
And that's exactly what this reminds me of. Like, remember how Brotherhood had, like, your assassin pals? You just tap a button and you'd whistle and they'd show up and kill them all, right?
Yeah, at some point, all of that seemed like a chore to me. Like, a lot of Assassin's Creed seemed like, I can't deal with it.
That's kind of where this game kind of builds on a lot of those systems. So, like, you have to find the right orc first. He has to be epic or legendary, right? And then you dominate him.
And
but
you have
also
to fall in love with him. Oh, no.
yeah. But also then you have to read. He's got weaknesses. Okay, great. So I know if I run around with a guy with a fire sword, not to bring him out. Okay, cool. So now he's got weaknesses on top of that. So now, do I death threat him? Do I shame him? There's just too many things going on. To kind of like keep me into it. I know some people love these types of games, all these like intricate systems that you can work to do all these cool things with, but it doesn't feel as organic to me. It's just
organic. But with all the system, it did seem that they don't handle it very well, but with like a lot of windows and stats and like. It looks very cluttered. I don't know if it feels very cluttered.
It feels when you're playing it, some of the way so you have to look at the army, and each little area has its own army. And like I said, I only made it towards the midpoint of Act 2, so I mean I didn't get all the way to the end of it. Things might change. I really died though, because from everything I heard, the ending gets even worse. But you're managing a lot of these little intricate, like, okay, so this orc is the boss over here and he's reporting to this guy, so it's that same nemesis system going on, but think about it is instead of one area you're managing like 6 areas, you know. And same thing when you die, the time advances, or when you resolve certain conflicts, the time advances, or I don't know. And like, at least as far as I never really even felt like I needed orcs at all. Like I could have probably played like the equivalent of like a pacifist run through where I just don't dominate any, because I'm pretty good at that Batman style combat, and they don't add enough to me, but you need them for the sieges, which is where they're getting their money.
It sounds a lot like this was a game that was where the engineers had control over it, right? Where like the engineers wanted to show off the systems they could create without regard to how the players would perceive it.
That's a good way to put it. And then right on top of that, what happened is somebody said, oh, and on top of that, we can throw these microtransactions in to shortcut these systems. You know what I mean? Like, and everybody knows.
It's almost an acknowledgement that the systems were unnecessary to begin with.
Yeah, if you can buy a shortcut, then why is it in there? You know, so it's. I think we talked about it a couple of times now. Games as content delivery, or games as a service, whatever you want to call it. But that's what this one kind of feels like. One of the reasons I don't usually quit games. I usually see it to the very end, until like what I always describe it as like seeing the treadmill, right? Like you see like, okay, all I'm doing is dominating orcs so that I can kill orcs, so that I can get better gear, so I can kill orcs, so I can dominate. It's like
you see through the matrix. You see like the numbers.
It's just a treadmill at this point. I'm making incremental upgrades, and it doesn't really matter if I get a better bow. It doesn't matter. I mean, like, the guy takes 2 shots instead of 1, or the guy's immune to bows, and it doesn't matter. Like, it's all just kind of, I don't know. I really felt it strong with this game, and I didn't feel it with Mad Max. I didn't feel it with Batman or any of the other kind of like brawler WB games. So, man, I was let down.
It's a Skinner box.
It weirdly feels a little bit soulless. Like, I've seen it, and I was like not compelled to buy it at all.
That's why I can't describe it why, but the orcs have more personality. They definitely do. They come in and they've got like these like monologues about I died on the battlefield and maggots ate my flesh, but now they're in me and I'm ready to, and it's Grom maggot flesh is like what the scary voice says over it, and then you're like, oh okay, you push the button, you're like, okay, weak to fire. And then you just burn them, and you just okay, and then Grom maggot flesh lies dead on the field, and and
then he comes back.
Yeah,
and you've killed me once before.
And he comes back like 50 times, but he's like basically at this point just like a living armor plate.
This is the 51st time we've met.
So I don't know. I mean, I think what everybody that I've told I actually bought this game, what they've said to me is, well, I was just going to get it on sale. So I'd say do that. Get it for $20, like everybody does with any kind of single player games these days. It's not a must buy at all to me.
Yeah, it felt very strange for me to read all the reviews and see the streams because I was sure that they would like really. I didn't think they would reinvent the Wii with the Nemesis system, but I thought that they would like make it just a little bit better, not overcomplicated.
Yeah,
but just the Nemesis, a little bit better.
For all the problems, it's still the best part of the game, but the problem is that they tie in so much progress to it, because before all the Nemesis system really was to basically work your way up that hierarchy, and kind of like manipulate the system so the guy that killed you gets all the way to the top before you kill him, and so you get the maximum, whatever, for doing it. But this game, it doesn't really matter how you manipulate it, because once you kill them all, they're just going to pop right back up, and you're in 10 different areas, so it's like you're not as tied to the locale, if that makes sense. You're just bouncing from minus whatever to I can't remember what it's called, minus Ithel. It ends up becoming something else. I won't spoil it, but I don't know. It's hard because I don't know if I was really hyped when this was announced. I liked the first one enough, and I was like you. I was like, man, with just a couple changes here and there, this could be an amazing series. But I mean,
you dropped the ball.
Yeah.
So
well, bummer.
So I guess Shadow of War, disappointing. Wolfman, what have you been playing?
It's actually kind of funny because I've been playing two main games in the lead up to Super Mario Odyssey coming out, and kind of weirdly enough, both of them are kind of what Kappa and Science were talking about. I'm only going to focus on the latter, but in terms of like that kind of nice podcasty, chill, mellow game, Stardew Valley has been excellent.
Neat. Mm-hmm.
I've never played Harvest Moon, so really the only comparisons I can give to it are like Animal Crossing, but it's really nice.
Yeah.
Like, it's just friendly and interesting, and there's this kind of nice, cool, dark undercurrent, and I get really excited about making sure that I've planted all my potatoes and bean trellises.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, plant those potatoes. I have a question. What console are you playing it on? What PC console? Switch. Nice.
It seems like it's the perfect Switch game, right?
Yeah,
like,
that seems like a very good game for that.
Take on the go, pull out for 5 minutes.
It is really nice when I'm just like, it's like really weird how it hasn't fully changed the way I'm playing stuff, but it's just really nice to just like, okay, I want to go somewhere else, I'll take the Switch with me. It's really, like, it's not crazy revolutionary, but it's... I was really feeling satisfied for doing that, and it kind of set aside this gulf to the real game I want to talk about, which is unfortunately very similar to Kappa's description of Shadow of War, and that's Mass Effect Andromeda.
Oh no.
So here's the thing with this game, and I've been planning to write an article on it since pretty much before I bought the game, and I've been kind of sort of formulating ideas in my head about what I'm thinking about it. And fundamentally, the problem with Mass Effect Andromeda is it doesn't know what it wants to be, but it has too many ideas of what it thinks it wants to be or thinks it should be. Like
I try not to think about Mass Effect Andromeda too much, but I would agree with you.
Yeah, I didn't hate it, but I mean it's I don't know. I hate saying this, but you know how people say about Fallout. It's a great game, but it's not a great Fallout game. Like, if Mass Effect Andromeda was any other game series, you'd probably actually like it a lot more. But just something about it,
maybe with less bugs. With less bugs.
No,
I didn't have that many, honestly.
I saw some things, but
I was trying to talk to a squad mate, and the squad mate walked through the fucking wall.
Yeah. Yeah, you can
awesome.
glitch into a place that you shouldn't be in, and then you cannot glitch out, and then, well, if you don't have a manual save, then you're kind of fucked. So interesting things. Mass Effect Andromeda, very good.
I mean, that was the most I enjoyed the game was seeing that fucking Liam walk through the fucking wall. My apologies for cursing.
Curse only once.
Yeah,
we're an X-rated podcast.
Yeah. You know, I try to bring a little bit of fancy
decorum. Oh, fuck that. Sure. That went out the window. That went out the window like the second we brought Banner Thief on here, which is the first episode.
It's a very spooky episode of this
anyway,
podcast.
Sorry, continue.
Because it wants to be, well, first off, it wants to be a Mass Effect game. And it also wants to be this incredible open-world adventure where you could do literally anything. And that's because during development, it wanted to be essentially No Man's Sky. Mm-hmm. And aside from the fact that I don't think No Man's Sky is a good fit for Mass Effect, because procedural generation doesn't really go well with the kinds of, like, likable characters and fun relationships that you get from Mass Effect and BioWare.
Yeah,
also,
procedural generation doesn't really lend itself well to deep storytelling.
Yeah, I'd say that the highs of Mass Effect trilogy were the character interactions.
Yeah, it's the character interactions, or it's the levels that facilitate those interactions, like the Tuchanka mission in 3, and really the loyalty missions there in 2, or like.
And your favorite Mass Effect was 2 or 3? Because that's mostly where people diverge.
I want to put it to 2, but to be honest, I kind of like each one a lot, and I feel like the stuff I like about each one is because I feel like each one kind of supersedes the other in a couple ways.
Yeah.
So it's not like where I'll just play one of them immediately. I'm like, oh, you know what? I kind of like this more in this one, or like this.
For me, it kind of like changed so much. Like from the first one to the second one, it's just like a completely different game in many ways, and it didn't change as much between the second and the third one.
Yeah. I mean, they found a formula that worked for them, and they.
One of the hard things too about Mass Effect is it's going to happen, but I don't like that it did. Is people are going to compare Andromeda to the entire series of Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it's hard to say. Well, I went on this big like they might have been planning a whole nother trilogy. I'm not sure. I know they are now. Yeah, but I mean, so like if you think about where you were in Mass Effect 1, I mean, there was a pretty cool story there, but you didn't have a lot of the the attachments you had to certain people that you ended up having. But I'm not saying Andromeda ever would have got there, but at the same time, it was hard on the internet when people were like, well, there was no equivalent of Garrus. Well, yeah, but you had how many hours? 240 hours or so with Garrus compared to, so that was always hard for me to kind of, when it comes to the companions, I was like, I would have liked more time with all of them. I think all the companions at least were interesting, but, it
didn't have the time to build its mythology and its characters.
I'm actually going to go around that because I do think a couple of the characters, particularly Jal and Vetra, are really good and kind of are up there with like some of my favorite characters in the series.
I have no idea who you're talking about, but yeah.
I didn't end up playing Andromeda, so
neither have I.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah.
But here's one of the other issues. Well, one of the many issues. First off, is that Mass Effect 1. Like, I'm sure they had, like, an idea for a trilogy, but I don't think that, like... I think when they set out to make Mass Effect 2, they made Mass Effect 2. And then when they set out to make Mass Effect 3, they made Mass Effect 3. This one is so obviously trying to be the first part in a series that it's... Like, the first Mass Effect game, there, are kind of low-stakes cliffhangers. Like, we're gonna have to fight the Reapers, da-da-da-da-da. But every story, all the character stuff, they have conclusions. And as far as I can tell, so much of this game is really trying to front load stuff to make you excited for the sequel that's almost certainly not going to happen.
That does make sense though, because they had to plan another batch of these games, and that's how they kind of roll at this point, right? They have to plan a whole...
But it's just sad.
Yeah, it is.
Like Wolfman said, Mass Effect 1 stands on its own. It sets up stuff for a sequel for sure.
I think that Mass Effect 1 was...
Yeah.
Yeah. So proceed. Yeah. Sorry.
I was going to say the conclusion is setting up this Mass Effect 2. But, you defeat Saren at the end of Mass Effect. I guess spoilers for the first Mass Effect. But
You beat the bad guy.
Come on, man!
you beat the bad guy at the end of Mass Effect. There's a self-contained story. There are self-contained character arcs. Everything concludes, but there's enough to tease for a sequel. It does both effectively.
I do think that Mass Effect 1 was kind of an accident, it almost seems like. I
also think that they, BioWare had to know that a sequel wasn't necessarily guaranteed.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. They didn't exactly know if this is going to be a hit or not. It seemed like an experiment, and then it kind of blew up.
It crashed and burned.
Aside from, all of Clancy Brown's terrible dialogue, the worst part of the game to me is the part when you're talking to this, bureaucrat played by Kumail Nanjiani.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And he's like, oh, by the way, one of these ships went missing. They're carrying all of the Hanar and the Elcor and the Volus and all the non-humanoid species, and they'll be here in the next game. I mean, the next wave.
Yeah, yeah. The whole ship thing. When I saw the trailer for this game, back when it was on, I think it was E3 2015, 14?
It was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
It was the one with the Ghost Rider cover.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember. Never mind. Anyway, it looked like, you have this whole new galaxy to explore. What could you find there? And then, same old shit. Okay, well, that's
yeah. It's kind of that's one of my big digs about it is how boring they made the Andromeda galaxy. There's really only two. There's no get crazy with the aliens. I mean,
so much you could do. What's wrong with you? The same shit.
Yeah, you should have 5 legs and 8 dicks and 3 heads.
It's basically
It's
the collectors that they just made the collectors again.
Yeah, they made the collectors, except they're also the Geth, and they're also Cerberus, and they're also the Reapers. They're basically a greatest hits album of all the other Mass Effect baddies.
Yeah, it's such a shame because you could what were the writers doing, or were they impaired by other members of the team that said no, you can't do that?
A silicone-based life form that only talks in Morse code style tapping on itself. I go crazy with it, man. It's
maybe they had these ideas, and then the suit said, no, we have to have a similar story to the original Mass Effect trilogy. People don't like change.
Well, I think that's the thing is there's this desire to be new, but then there's this desire to kind of be like the old ones. And at its best, the game does feel like it takes the best ideas of all the 3 games. So there's this new alien species, and I think a lot of the best parts of the game are your character who's kind of the emissary for all of the main species from the original series, trying to integrate herself into this society and be an ambassador.
Yeah, that's all boring. I thought that's a boring story. That's I'm not interested with any of that. I actually thought that at the beginning of Mass Effect Andromeda, when I first saw the trailer, I thought there's going to be a little bit of maybe dread at what you're going to actually meet. Maybe it's going to be really dangerous and really, alien.
Really play with the idea of you showing up and them thinking you're some kind of conquering force,
Yeah, because you kind of are.
Yeah, and I don't know. I kind of was reminded while I was playing Halo actually about this. I don't know how much you guys know about the lore of Halo, but
a little bit.
Okay, so millions of years ago, humanity was the most powerful species in the universe, and then the flood shows up, and humanity basically flees the flood. They're running from them, throughout space. As they're running, they run into the Forerunners. The Forerunners have no idea. They're like, whoa, these guys just showed up, and they're really powerful military. Let's start fighting them. But they didn't realize they were running from something. So when I first heard about Andromeda, that's what I thought was going on. We get that kind of feeling hey, we're running from the Reapers, trying to escape them. we're finding this galaxy where it was like, you know, friend or foe. They resolved this stuff, you know, in terms of, you know, us being shown as conquerors, you know, or humanity, whatever you want to say, in like what 2 quests. It's like, okay, you guys are cool.
But that's the thing. It's like the best are these little glimpses. Like they're nice character moments, and there's a few of them, but most of them aren't. Most of the like some of the characters like get time to kind of like explore their personalities. They're interesting for the most part. But most of the time, they're just kind of doing that kind of like Joss Whedon-y, like quipping.
Yeah. And then
whole new galaxy of shit, and we have Joss Whedon quippy.
And then you spend 2/3 of the game fighting the renegade settlers that never really made sense. Like they left the station, right? Like, and they're like, okay,
I'm just gonna go say this. Sorry to interrupt, but. The whole point of the game is you're basically like a colony of people, and there's only like a few 100,000. So every time you kill someone, you're lowering the genetic pool.
Yeah.
Like except dumb. Murdered entire villages.
It's dumb. It feels like sci-fi channel level of fucking storytelling, meandering bullshit. Like this crap is...
Wait, I just want to say one last thing.
Some shit on sci-fi is great.
I'm saying about the bad. I'm saying about the
Alpha's
bad
fucking amazing.
No, I know. I'm saying about the bad shit.
But you know, I see what you're saying, but I think I think you can't take that part out of the game because they didn't create enough cool enemies. There was only one enemy, so they're like, well, we got to have you fight some humans. Well, we just all showed up on a big lifeboat. Why are we fighting any humans? I mean,
it's like, why?
You know what's crazy to me? I know. Okay, so we've all played Mass Effect, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the original trilogy. Haven't played it.
I meant that. So in the original trilogy. The deal is, you know, it's this elaborate, like, political infighting on this, you know, magical space station when humanity is now, like...
Basically Game of Thrones, where people fight amongst each other, but there's this larger threat that looms over everyone.
Yeah, and so in the main trilogy, you know, you have humans who are, like, they're the young race, but they're also really ascendant, and they're super imaginative. You have the Turians, who are these... like mighty soldiers, the Asari, who are basically the blue-skinned alien women from a Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
And then you have like the Solarians, who are the nerds that always get the shaft in each game.
Yeah.
And you have the Krogan, who are basically the exile brute race, who, you know, have been screwed over constantly by the galaxy. And
why are humans always the boring race? Like in all games, in all media.
You know what? There was actually a little cool take on that, and amongst other stuff. I really liked Cora's take on kind of like being an Asari fangirl.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of like the response to why are humans the boring one, because like that's kind of how she looked at humanity. Like, look how cool the Asari are. And,
It's also a nice switch where, like, in Mass Effect 1, you know, I like the characters, Caden and Ashley aside. But, like, Garrus is, for the most part, in Mass Effect 1, a standard Turian. Liara is a, quote, standard Asari. Mm-hmm. And, you know, over time they evolve and become, you know, more unique. But, like, I like the fact that, you know, Vetra and, I don't like PB at all.
I saw some...
PB is a very love it or hate it character for someone who got featured so prominently.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But you know, it's so like you go to Andromeda and it's run by humans and Solarians and Asari and Turians, and Krogans are exiles. Like, the political structure is exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like it's insane.
Really imaginative.
It's like nothing changed.
Yeah, it's so like insecure and unsure of what it is or wants to be that like there are all sorts of mechanical issues that like I have that I don't even think are important to talk about. The game has feature bloat to hell and back. There's crafting. There's like 3 separate crafting systems. There's looting. There's like a weird multiplayer mode I haven't done because I don't care at all.
You know, now I see the problem here. They moved to a new galaxy not to explore and explore interesting ideas and new concept. concepts. They moved to a new galaxy to clean the slate and just do the same old shit without the story of the original trilogy. It's just the laziest writing you could imagine.
There's enough of it through the memory fragments, to connect it, but it feels very tenuous to be at all connected to it. So
and also that the notion of like it being like trying to be not at all like Mass Effect, but at the same time too much like original Mass Effect. I feel it's kind of like summed up in the fact that early on in the game, you go to your dad's room and he has got a bunch of like audio recordings from Liara. And Liara's an important character, and I don't think there's anything wrong with her having a tie to the game, but it's just like the main like Turian NPC who's not a partner is a cousin to one of the characters from the DLC for the third game.
Oh boy.
Like everyone just is kind of like it's this incredible vast galaxy where everyone knows the same people.
Yeah, seems like some fans have written the game instead of just professional writers.
Oh, like fanfic where it's like
fanfic, yeah.
It's about Harry Potter's son.
I always call it like the Forrest Gump syndrome. Like how like in Assassin's Creed 3, for example, like Connor just always happens to be present at every single major event in American history. Like literally nothing can be done if Connor's not involved. It was
he's the Kickstarter too.
So
actually, and kind of like I haven't gotten this far in the game, but my understanding is that the twist there's two twists, and the good one. Or the better one, it's kind of reminds me of that twist in Assassin's Creed 3 where you find out that George Washington killed Connor's nation.
Spoilers!
And that's like... But I like that as a twist because it's a twist that makes sense in universe, but it's also something you could have just learned by, like, reading history.
Yeah, that's the ultimate twist. Like when I was watching Passion of the Christ. Whoa! The fuck happened here?
Wow, this is really anti-Semitic. What a twist!
I need to read up on this shit because this is weird.
Who would have guessed? Given the filmmaker.
Okay, so that was our Mass Effect 2 fan cast and Mass Effect Andromeda fan cast.
This is just like, I think it's like our 18th or 19th episode of this podcast where we rambled on Mass Effect for like 2 hours.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
I think it says a lot about the game. I mean, like that people are that passionate about it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very large.
And also, one last thing is, I know Merve, you and I are pretty excited for Mario Odyssey.
Me too. I'm also excited.
Yes,
I'm very excited.
And one of the things that it's kind of mellowed out as they've introduced some of the newer levels that are more kind of stock video gamey levels, but like one of the things that I am really interested in it is that it's got like levels that a lot of levels you don't really see in a Mario game, or levels that you do but they're twisted. Like the lava level is like based around weird polygonal metal food, or like the desert level is also frozen over. Like it's
or cities. It's like, this Mario level is twisted.
I'm just super excited that Mario is going to be interacting with realistically proportioned humans, because it's going to fuck with people's brains.
Yeah, he looks like a mutant.
Well, no, he's not a mutant. He's just Mario.
No,
he's just a weirdly proportioned human.
Well, he's a human, and he's also not a human. He's Mario.
Jesus, I can't. Are there other Marios? Is he a singular being?
Well, it's kind of like Schrodinger's box. He is a human, and he's not a human. He's just Mario.
No, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me.
But then, I'm sorry. The reason I mentioned this whole thing is just because, by contrast, you have a couple interesting planets in Mass Effect Andromeda, sort of. But for the most part, it's standard alien architecture, standard desert world, standard ice world.
And then they meet up Mario.
See, that always bothers me about planets in Mass Effect, and it bothered me in the original trilogy. Why aren't the planets just as varied as Earth is?
Yeah,
like Earth isn't a desert planet. Earth isn't a jungle planet. It's a planet with a whole bunch of different biomes. Why do all of these planets in Mass Effect have just like a single biome?
Because it's the Star Trek problem. You just kind of like, we're just gonna focus on one aspect of it to make it.
I mean,
like we don't want to make 4 worlds that are varied because they're gonna be bland, because we're not imaginative enough. So we're like gonna just desert planet, hot planet, cold planet, boring planet. All of them are boring planets.
Like if the planet has a singular theme, it has to be a really interesting one. Like this is a planet where the water is actually replaced with acid, or this is a planet where gravity works sideways. I don't know.
That's
something
interesting. Been in Mario games.
But Merve, listen to me. That would be too interesting. Like they would actually have to focus on that. That's not the EA way. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's not the BioWare way.
And that's the thing that just makes me sad, is it's not like these developers are just dumb like morons who just kind of bashed a hammer at a bunch of computers. Outside of maybe the Postal series, I don't think any video game developers are like that.
No, I think they just didn't want to take any chances, and that's the most depressing thing. I believe they had a bunch of interesting ideas and writers and that wanted to explore a new galaxy, and then they just kind of said no to a bunch of those ideas.
And then they replaced them with chaff because this game is bloated so much. Anyway, I'm sorry.
And like, I know we're going off on a tangent here, but let's just pursue this. I think EA is sort of EA is kind of forcing things to be safe. They've shuttered Visceral just a few days ago. It was making their single player Star Wars game helmed by, I believe this is the one that was helmed by Amy Hennig. Mm-hmm. Like they're taking away a lot of opportunities to make interesting, single player experiences, and they're forcing this like Ubisoft game type skin on games that don't really, where it doesn't really fit. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Ubisoft, no, it's fine. Except Ubisoft also, like, as much as I shit on them, they also have unique stuff. I mean, Mario plus Rabbids was an actual risk. Valiant Hearts was a risk. Child of Light was a risk.
Have you noticed that apart from Ubisoft and some other like companies here and there, most big companies are slowly all turning into Konami? Like, we're not very interested in making games. We just want to make brands. Really focused on making brands and easy money. That's kind of not interesting.
Are you not excited for the Division movie?
Division movie happening? Why?
They optioned the movie before the damn thing came out.
It's like with Star Wars. I already have bought tickets for it.
Yeah, Star Wars has that Rian Johnson touch.
That's true. See, the thing about Ubisoft is they use the money from Assassin's Creed and Far Cry to fund projects like Child of Light and Grow Home and games like that. EA has got their sort of Indies at EA initiative. I forget exactly what it's called, and I think they're sort of funding games like Unravel and that.
I thought Sony funded Unravel.
Sony funded Unravel?
I thought that was why it was a PS4 exclusive, right?
Wait, let me check this up.
Anyway, this is
man, this podcast is gonna get fucked up on corrections.
It was published by EA.
Okay.
It's on Windows, PS4, and Xbone.
Okay, fair enough. My apologies. Anyway, I think it's actually kind of funny because we're talking about this in relation to Mass Effect, because Mass Effect was kind of like the vanguard of the one period where EA was really imaginative. Like, they basically tried to have this, like, they tried to reinvent their image because they made, like, Mass Effect, and they made Dead Space and Mirror's Edge, and
Saboteur, a whole bunch of other games like that as well.
Yeah. I mean, truth be told, it was BioWare doing Mass Effect, and BioWare was still like in its reinvention phase with its Dragon Age and all of that, and it was all interesting and fairly complex and captured like the attention of hardcore RPG gamers and also people that just were in it for the story, and it all went downhill pretty quickly.
What happened
with Dragon Age. I think Dragon Age really showed the decline of what BioWare was going for.
Well, I also think part of the issue was that really Mass Effect was the only one that was particularly successful. Like,
I mean, Dragon Age 1 was very good.
No, I meant like of that slate, because I'm considering Dragon Age to be like after that initial slate, because like Mirror's Edge bombed and Dead Space did well, but it didn't do well enough for me.
Wait, Mirror's Edge didn't actually bomb. That's a misconception.
Oh, okay.
Mirror's Edge did not sell gangbusters, but
middle of the road.
It was like a middle of the road kind of thing.
That's
like it was uncertain that it would get a sequel, but there was no like it wasn't a sales disaster.
Then the internet fought like hell to get a sequel that they didn't buy.
Well, the sequel
the sequel was
because it got all that other EA garbage on it.
Yeah. Okay. See, the funny thing about the Mirror's Edge sequel, it wasn't even the EA garbage that made it bad. Although I will say there was no reason to put an EA style progression system in there, or an Ubisoft style, whatever you want to call it. What was bad about it was it had the single worst story that I've played in a video game in like the past decade.
No,
it was
that's
literally
great.
that bad.
Sounds fantastic.
It was so badly written.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, and if you have something that's really melodramatic, you either need really, really good voice actors who can sell it, or voice actors are just going to ham it up. So it becomes kind of campy. And this was neither. It was semi-competent voice actors who couldn't make it believable, but they also couldn't make it kind of enjoyably terrible. So it was just a slog to get through cutscenes.
Yeah.
And the cutscenes didn't have much to do with the actual gameplay. You could literally just lift out the cutscenes, replace it with better cutscenes, and you'd automatically have a game that was like twice as enjoyable.
Yeah, cool. So welcome to our EA podcast. We're going to discuss all things.
Podcast where we haven't even bashed Gearbox or Sonic yet.
So I was actually going to say, like, I was coming in preparing to do the prerequisite Sonic bash. What I was just going to say with this is that you can kind of see, like, basically them, as the years go on, trying to kind of retrofit all their stuff into more easily sold boxes. So, like, for the most part, as much as it's far less imaginative than the original Mass Effect, I do find, like, the cover shooting in 2 and 3 more satisfying, but that was very clearly, we aren't going to be as ambitious and we're going to focus on more of this, like, traditional cover shooting rather than exploration, But then you have, like, a worse version, which is Dead Space becoming more of just an action series.
Yeah.
And Dead Space was pretty derivative from the beginning. I mean, that is basically Alien and Resident Evil 4 and Metroid Prime and System Shock 2
and a little bit of The Thing.
Yeah, and, like, derivative's not necessarily bad. Like, this year's Prey is very derivative, and it's one of the best games of the year. Mm-hmm. And this is a game that really wore its influences on its sleeve.
I mean, Dead Space was very good. Like, the first one, the second one. Great games. Fantastic games.
Like I'm not huge. I've only played the first Dead Space. I'm not, like, a huge fan of it or anything.
No,
but I recognize that it's... I recognize that it's sort of it was a unique game at the time, and recognize it as being enjoyable for what it is. But, like, it has a unique identity, right? It's this survival horror game where you're making makeshift weaponry that feels unique to play with based on what you can scramble together by exploring the space station.
And it has an interesting, like, it's super derivative, but it has this one interesting mechanical system, which is, like, where you can cut off limbs off. Yeah, and that's interesting, and that can lead to interesting, like, level and enemy designs.
You also say that it's derivative, but I think if you throw enough influences into one pot, you're just gonna get something unique. You know.
But science fiction horror in space, the video game.
Yeah,
whenever you design a game around a gimmick, it's always hard to kind of keep up, right? Like, so, like, they couldn't keep up with the dismemberment gimmick being the core of the game, right? I mean, it's still in there in 2 and 3, but it's like, it's part of it, but it's not, like, the focus. Like, in 1, it really mattered. Like, you had to basically chop these guys up before you could do anything. In 2, they kind of relaxed a little bit on that.
Yeah, because they wanted to make it more of an action.
Yeah, in 1, it had an enemy that could only be defeated temporarily by amputating all of the limbs off of them. So, But this is what I'm kind of getting at, is that over time, all of these extraneous or interesting ideas kind of were cut out.
in favor of design that was streamlined to an extent that actually removed the things that made the series interesting in the name of, quote, accessibility. And now we've kind of gone full circle where Mass Effect Andromeda has, like I said, 3 separate crafting systems and an unnecessary level of sandbox design, and is meant to be like a Skyrim like competitor.
Yeah. It seemed like they just looked at other games and said, "Oh, those games have this thing in it. I think we should also have this thing in it." And
it's not even accessibility at that point. It's just chasing market trends.
Yeah, and I should note, I have literally no idea how to do any of the crafting or looting stuff. I just sell things to merchants and then hope I can find a gun that's slightly better than the gun I have.
Guys, I hate crafting in games. A lot of the crafting in games I hate. There's some games that do it okay, but like most of the games, it's like, I don't want to deal with this garbage.
I liked it in Breath of the Wild because it was simple.
Yeah, it's so simple. So simple crafting is okay, but like if you have to collect 20 of this, 4 of this, 8 of that, like it's just fucking whatever. This is the future, isn't it? I should be able to synthesize everything from carbon or something.
That's why I like Prey. What you do is you gather junk, you break it down to its component materials, and use the component materials to build whatever you want.
Like you have just goop that you can just do whatever you want with, basically.
Yeah, there's 4 different kinds of goop. That's the crafting system in Prey.
And just to use the Breath of the Wild example quickly, like what's cool about that is that you don't make specific dishes. You just say like, this food can all go together and it'll make something, and maybe that something will be better if you make specific things together.
Yeah, it doesn't have recipes. It's just experimentation, which is also kind of a fun thing to throw into the crafting mechanic. Like, you don't know what you're gonna get, but you experiment, and you always will probably get something good if you don't use awful ingredients, and that's fun.
Yeah, by contrast, again, like I have no idea how to spend like points that I get from scanning objects into upgrading, into unlocking the ability to craft a machine gun, which again is different from crafting a machine gun, which I can't because I need other materials to actually purchase this machine gun that I've unlocked.
Okay, I'm going to regret asking this, but what's the logical connection between
I'm making the same sound
scanning a planet?
That Kappa made at the beginning of this.
What's the logical connection between scanning a planet and learning how to make a machine gun?
Okay, so basically,
how does that teach me how to make a machine gun?
So basically, at its heart, the idea is that you're supposed to, explore these worlds and find new like flora and fauna and technology, whatever. And so the idea is that when you scan those, you will get points to show that you've explored this kind of either the Milky Way or this one kind of alien technology or this other kind of alien technology. And then you get all these points, and you can spend those points basically on guns or weapons, but you don't buy them. What you do is you unlock the ability to make them.
Yeah, you research them. Yeah, I get that. I get how it works mechanically. I just don't understand. I don't understand what the narrative justification is. Like, how does if I take a picture of a tulip, I don't learn how to grow apples.
Yeah, I scanned Venus. I know how to make a minigun. Like what?
Yeah, I'm still mad
what's the logic?
because I still haven't gotten a submachine gun, and I've been playing this game for 29 hours, and I'm playing as an infiltrator, who's a character who works really well with a sniper rifle and a submachine gun.
All of this sounds a lot like what's happening with the Shadow of War game. Like there's like unnecessary systems on top of unnecessary systems. This isn't a game about that. This isn't even a game about systems. At least Shadow of War is a game about systems. Like it always was. The first game wasn't about the story, but Mass Effect was about the story. What are you doing with all this shit?
And you also have like storage upgrading limits, so it's like I've got the 60 kinds of like dead animal that I have to maybe bake into a gun.
We spent an hour. We spent an hour talking about Mass Effect at this point.
I'm so sorry, Merve.
No. This is fine. We're being loose on this podcast.
Yeah, loosey-goosey.
Because I think that Mass Effect Andromeda and Shadow of War kind of perfect counterpoints to the actual topic you wanted to talk about, because It's kind of perfect.
Yeah, so let's get to that. We originally had on the docket for this podcast that we're going to talk about outsider art in video games. And we spent a lot of time talking about mainstream games today. We spent a lot of time talking about these big AAA behemoths.
Yeah, for a contrast,
Yeah, that feel like they were focus tested to death and had meddling from like 30 or 40 different executives. Yeah. But there are a whole bunch of video games out there that are made by like one or two people that are outside the mainstream, that are made by developers who don't really have formal training or schooling. So, I don't know, to me this is really interesting because, like, especially, we talk about outsider art in like visual art, it's usually you talk about artists who made this really unique work that's discovered after their death, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But in video games, like, there are a lot of indie devs who are just like self-taught.
Yeah.
Like, take the guy who made Dust from Legion Tale. What's his face? Dean Dodrell. He taught himself how to program. He was an artist. He taught himself how to program so he could make that game. So, depending. Yeah, go ahead.
It's hard to do. Like, fundamentally, there's unlike a lot of fundamentally unlike visual art, the technology gap is, I think, the biggest obstacle for video games being outsider, or video games that are outsider art, because, like, realistically, to make a video game, you're going to have to own a computer and an internet connection to probably, even if it's to download something like RPG Maker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be connected in some way. Is Dust an outsider art kind of game?
See, I don't really know. That's why I wanted to ask this question to you guys, especially in video games. There are all these games made by self-taught people.
See, it's hard because I think with so many things with games, like, let's say you're a hell of a game writer, you might not have any experience coding, but if you've got like a labor of love, when I was thinking was Lucas Pope, the guy who did Papers, Please, and before that he did Republia Times.
Yeah.
So there's definitely like an aesthetic to it. I know he used to work at Naughty Dog, right? I'm pretty sure it was not.
So? Maybe.
Yeah, so
I'm not sure.
I think he worked at Naughty Dog, but I mean he definitely knew how to make games. He didn't teach himself, just like he wasn't like a stockbroker or whatever that just decided to start making games. But that's kind of what I think of. Like, I'm sure at Naughty Dog, which is a huge studio, he wasn't the guy who did step A to step Z of putting out Uncharted. So I'm sure there was stuff in there he had to teach himself. But it's very rare that I think you get the actual for real, never wrote a game before type things. What I see more is the indie guys who strike out on their own, who do maybe have some industry experience, but know that that's not for them. They want to do their own thing.
Yeah, a lot of the time that's true.
Yeah.
I think it's the true outsider art for me, as close as it gets with video games, is like really avant-garde stuff, like very niche indie stuff that's not at all in mainstream, or even in the indie mainstream, let's say. Like, it's not being played by streamers, and it's not very nobody is talking about it.
Pony Island, maybe.
Yeah,
well, maybe even more obscure than that. I when I thought about the game, I thought about when I read this topic, I thought about Crypt Worlds and Crypt Underworld, the sequel that's still being made. It's this very avant-garde, open-world, weird game made by two people, or maybe two or three people, something like that. Well, it's really strange, and the mechanics aren't like traditional normal mechanics. It seems like it's as close as that kind of thing gets to
because I usually think more about like Flash games. Like,
I was gonna
also
like,
Flash games also.
But like Flash games used to be like a thing. You know what I mean? Like, it used to be like that's what you played for a while. I was thinking of a game you guys might have maybe not played it. Have you ever remember play a game called Rebuild?
No,
I haven't heard of it. Sorry.
I want to say I actually just looked it up. Her name is Sarah Northway. And Rebuild is a very, like, for its time, it was a pretty influential Flash game. It was basically, like most of the things at the time, it was all about zombies, right? So it was a zombie game, but rather than focusing on, like, shooting zombies in the head, it was, like, managing, like, a rebuilding civilization. So, you know, assigning people tasks, you know, who's the teacher, who goes out and gets food, who goes out and, you know, fights the rival gangs. It was a really fun Flash game, but that's kind of the... when I was thinking about, like you were saying, I usually think about these types of like Flash games that just were in a weird way very influential at a very certain time. But over, you know, I think now if you've got a good Flash game, it ends up getting picked up and getting made into a mobile game where if you bought Rebuild now, you probably have to wait, you know, 5 energy in order to build a house or you know, however they would.
And then also you have the thing where Flash games, for the most part, have kind of a shorter shelf life, and by that I mean, like, it's very hard to preserve them.
Yeah.
Like, the vast majority you will never find them again. They'll be taken off, or Newgrounds will get shut down or whatever, and they're gone.
Well, the Flash plugin itself is dying.
Yeah, that's true. And I think
plugins are going
also,
the way of the
like,
dinosaurs.
Flash itself may be, like, attracting a certain type of person, like, that wants to be a little more mainstream than if you're just creating a game on, like, Game Maker or something like that, and want to release it on itch.io or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm also thinking about a game called I'm Scared, by an Italian developer. Like, it's very niche horror game that tried new ideas, try to, like, reinvent the scary game formula in a very low-key way. Those are the games I'm thinking about. Like, Flash is... Yeah.
I'm Scared was like the pixel art one, right?
Yeah. It's very... rather, like, it doesn't look very special, but it does interesting things with its mechanics that even, like, to spoil it a little bit, if I think if you want to play it, you should, because it kind of does some interesting things, but it, like, kind of goes outside of the game, like, into your folders, and, like, it auto starts the game again when it closes. It fucks with you a little bit. And that's very interesting, and also kind of, I haven't seen a lot of that in any other game, because it's kind of one note, but it works as a singular experience, like a short artistic experience. Like, oh, I have an idea for a scary game that kind of, like, goes outside of the system, you know. I think that those games, like, with very unique ideas that haven't been really explored in mainstream art, maybe called outsider art, I guess.
I think, like, in terms of, I think really the stuff we know, the problem is that all the stuff we know are things that became successful. Like, I was thinking Pony Island or Five Nights at Freddy's for, like, stuff that, or even Papers, Please, which became obviously a huge sensation, but it's very much like working outside of normal video game conventions.
Yeah, so it's these games, like, that's my problem with this, is that all these games that we might think of as otherwise being outsider art, they get picked up by the games press. That's how we actually hear about them.
Yeah.
If they're good enough, it's just such a marketplace right now. If they're
but outsider art can be good, you know, and it, like, can be picked up, but it doesn't discredit it as outsider art, you know. It can be like, okay, we noticed it before the person, like, went into obscurity and died or something, but it's still very interesting, because I think the internet and the digital industry, like, moves at a quicker pace than, like, the artistic world, and when we see something innovative and imaginative, we pick it up very quickly. Like, it's like, oh, look at this, you know, I found a game that's very interesting in some ways, and then it gets really picked up very quickly. So maybe outsider art isn't really possible that much in video game form.
I think what it usually comes down to at some point, right? It's about the money. Eventually, you know, if you have, like,
it always comes down to money.
But if you have, like, a grand vision for a game, at some point you just can't do it all yourself. It's just not gonna. Do you know what I mean? It's very rare that you could put all the time and effort and everything. Once you start looking after the money, then it starts kind of every game gets that bloat, right? Well, okay, I had this really simple idea for a game, but now it's all this stuff. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we just only see the stuff that filters to the top because it's good, or it's because for whatever reason somebody put some money behind it, so now it's going to be advertised.
That's interesting, because I think the game I was talking about, Crypt Worlds, is kind of a stream of consciousness game. That's that doesn't have a singular idea, but it's like it definitely seems like they were making it up as they went, which is an interesting experience as you play it, because it creates this one whole experience, but it's not a singular thing that just ties it all together. And what's interesting about that is that Crypt Underworld was actually kickstarted, the sequel to this game. Yeah. Which, they needed money to explore these ideas a little more. Which, it always kind of comes down to that, because making games is hard and long, and with the Cuphead guys, you just kind of have to sacrifice a lot.
It costs a lot, not just in money, but just time.
Life.
Like, how long did Undertale take to make? How long did Stardew Valley take to make?
Exactly.
Yeah, but multiple years.
Well, it's interesting. One thing I've been thinking is, we've been talking about, the problem of finding, I guess you could call it true outsider art. And so for me, I was thinking, I kind of have to fudge the answers. And so, I was thinking, Flash games, weird porn games. But I was also thinking of, you had some ideas that you were kind of considering, Merve, on the, not to, see how the sausage gets made.
We have
do not look at the man behind the curtain.
Sorry. Go ahead.
That you mentioned a game called Hatred, and Hatred was very much like an unofficial fan remake of what I think is probably the ultimate example for how it would work in games, and that's Postal.
Yeah.
Postal is
Postal without the humor, basically.
Well, not really.
The original Postal wasn't really that humorous.
But what I mean is that Postal is, I guess you could say it's a first-person shooter in this kind of pseudo-sandbox. And I'm specifically
the first Postal wasn't. The first Postal was exactly like Hatred.
Well, the reason I'm really focusing on Postal 2 is my
Sure.
Is that, it's, on one hand, it did things that were, somewhat interesting, and then it tried to, mix kind of not procedural generation, but, an immersive sim with, a sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing is that, as it's gone on, I only found out about this a couple years ago. They have done, expansion packs for Postal 2, a few years ago.
Oh, that's weird.
It's crazy. The studio, the Running with Scissors, they only care about this one game. They have no, aspirations for making more interesting art or exploring new ideas. They're just kind of interested in fucking the chicken.
Wasn't there Postal 3?
There was. It was made by this Russian studio, and everyone hated it. And so then Postal 2 made a wacky expansion pack about how Postal 3 sucked, and also how feminist critics of video games are just fat and dumb.
Fuck.
That's the thing is it's part of this weird reactionary nasty corner of the video game market. And it doesn't really have any aspirations to go outside of that, and none of the people inside seem to really care about doing anything different. But inside that market, that weird, nasty kind of bro-y MRA type world, it's king. Nothing is bigger than, for this super small audience, it's almost thinking about something like Juggalos, where it's not really
I'm always thinking about Juggalos.
But where the audience isn't that
Hatchet
large,
Man.
which kind of and I guess there's kind of a weird myopia in both of them. So if you want to pretend that this was not just a completely random comparison on my part.
Sure. I don't know. There's so many games at this point. Steam gets flooded with a lot of garbage. And some of that garbage can actually be good, but nobody looks at all of that. So there may be hidden gems in there, but nobody ever will see them. That may be the ultimate outsider art, amongst the thousands of games that appear in Steam. There's one game that's
even games that seem like you even have games that are kind of manufactured to be outsider art. Like I think that was kind of like what Hatred was. That's certainly what like Goat Simulator was.
Yeah. The thing about Hatred was like it was built to provoke a reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It was very successful at doing that.
Yeah. It definitely was.
And arguably nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was apparently an awful game.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would not expect anything else. Again, that's another thing from this like weird part of like the market where we don't really like look at or talk about because it's kind of gross and it's kind of like a more aggressively angry version of like trauma.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's an angry kind of. How do I put this? You can sell GTA to a wide audience because the humor. I'm not defending the humor of GTA because I'm not a fan of it, but the humor's tongue in cheek, right? It feels like it's self-aware.
Yeah, and in theory, you can also do other things. Like I know Grand Theft Auto 4 is really not liked, and I kind of like it. Like I like Nico's story. I don't think it's a great game or a great GTA game, but it was a GTA game I enjoyed. And
I don't think it's interesting. I don't think Nico's story actually fits GTA. Like,
no, I don't think it does. It was just a story I liked and I thought was well told.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, so I mean, games I think can get away with being super ultra violent. It's just the tone with which you present it. Like Hatred presents its violence as something to be taken seriously. Like going around murdering innocent people isn't something you do for a lark. It's something you do because it's not something that provokes joy like in GTA when you run over some idiot. It's something that provokes. It's something like you're sublimating your anger at the world.
Yeah, it's weirdly
like
sociopathic.
glorifying massacre.
There's also, I think, the reverse, which is that your characters in GTA can get hurt a lot, which is my favorite moment in GTA 4. And I say this as someone who liked the story, was when I tried to carjack a woman and she punched me and then got out of the car and then kicked me in the shins.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
NPCs fight back. It's hilarious.
And that's sorry, I was just trying to think. Like, sorry, can you keep going ahead? Oh yeah, that was it. You remember Science over? It was like a year and a half ago almost, where you did like the second games cast, or sorry, the second avocado cast, and we talked about Neil Breen.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Neil Breen is a Las Vegas crypto-libertarian, paranoid, conspiratorial filmmaker who makes...
I love him.
Yeah, he's great. He makes these very weird movies that cast characters, always played by himself, sometimes nude, as these sort of like violent vigilante, yet also Christ-like martyr action heroes. And they fight like the mob, and they fight corrupt government officials.
He always has at least 3 laptops in front of him with which he hacks the government.
Hack the planet.
Yeah. We will definitely be putting in links to that to some of those in the link dump.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and so like his films, like there's a lot of like undercurrents of misogyny in his films. There's lots of undercurrents of paranoia in his films, and like this sort of weird fetishization of violence. And all of those things are stuff you can see in most movies, but they're usually tempered. Like, they're usually tempered by having other kinds of characters or, like, sympathetic protagonists. But
let's be honest, it's tempered by 20,000 people that also weigh in on the idea of, oh, well, wait, this has to be for all people to enjoy. You can't put that in this movie. So, and Neil Breen is definitely just one guy that is making this movie, and he can make whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah, because he's self-funded.
Where did he get the money?
Oh, he made his own. He's like apparently a fairly like successful architect. There's a bunch of like Mercedes and like fancy sports cars in his movies, and apparently all of those are his.
Designed by him.
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to get at is
he's like the he's a little bit like Tommy Wiseau in that he just has a bunch of money to burn on his like vanity projects.
I always wonder like where Uwe Boll and Tommy Wiseau and all these people get their money from.
I think with Boll it was just like he could turn around a product very quickly and very cheaply.
Tax write-offs.
Tax write-offs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that, but also it was like you could just put out some crap and Sega would get a little money, like to get a House of the Dead license, and who gives a shit if it was good or not?
Yeah, and then years later you can just release a video saying to kill all successful people.
Yeah, he made an insane paranoid video in which he basically like railed against everyone and the liberal elite, and like I think he was really angry.
Don't link to that, Merve. Don't link to that, Merve.
No, we're not going to link to the video. We'll link to an article on the Dissolve that has the video inside it.
Wait, is the Dissolve still online?
Yes, it is. It's closed, but it's still online.
Okay.
Yeah, and
good. Send me that link. I'll dump it in there.
I guess this is, I know, super tangential, and really most of what I say on this podcast is super tangential.
This is the tangential podcast.
Yeah,
it's all right. It's Halloween.
It's that
Halloween.
I guess the real closest you get to the spirit of outsider art isn't really games that are made completely independent of the culture around them. They're games meant as a response to that, or to like a rejection of that, like a rejection of normal values. And sometimes that's good when you get games like Papers, Please that are like, I'm going to make this game that's trying to interrogate like the misery of working at this border patrol for a totalitarian government. But then other kinds
it can be defined as many things. Really, it's like all art. It's what you really want it to be.
Yeah,
and I know it's a shitty answer, but art has a bunch of shitty answers for classifying it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that like outsider art and genre and literally everything are man-made terms that only bear abstract meaning. They're only as useful as we can.
Let's break it down on this.
Yeah, like I don't know if there's that much value to be playing semantics. I think we're trying to sort of figure out what the analogy is between outsider art and other media, where we have sort of a clearer picture of what outsider art and the world of visual art, the world of literature means. And I guess I'm trying to figure out what does that mean in video games.
I think that video game tools have to be more available. Like we're getting there, but like everybody can write, everybody can like press record on a dumb iPhone, right? Like those things are getting more and more like before, like every phone had a recording like a camera, you know. Before that you had to equip yourself with a camera, you had to buy it, and you know some of those were expensive, so now everybody has a fucking recording.
Like Vine wouldn't have existed in the pre-smartphone era.
Yeah, exactly. So you get those tools to everyone, like, and they're easy to use. You're gonna get some crazy shit that you wouldn't think that you would ever get. So it's a the more population gets their hands on the thing, the more crazy the medium is gonna get, I think. And we're getting there with video games.
And I think
we're seeing that with like Twine, Ren'Py, RPG Maker. Like we're getting those games out there. Like Undertale was made in RPG Maker, and like Hate Plus and Analog Hate Story made in Ren'Py.
Yeah.
Right? Like these games are being made in these new easy to use tools.
Yeah, and I think as we're going to see more and more technology open up outside of the traditional like centers for game design, and I really do think we're going to start seeing like, and especially as like Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony and Steam start like pushing into other countries, we're going to start getting, I think, more and more international stuff, which I'm looking forward to seeing.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we're sort of getting that with games like Cradle. I don't know if you guys played that, which came out of...
yeah, I did actually.
So, did that come out of the Ukraine, or... I forget.
I don't remember.
And in any case, we got this really bizarre sort of open worldish adventure / puzzle game with weird action puzzle segments in the middle, and it was really finicky, and for some reason crucial objects had physics applied to them, which made it really aggravating to play.
God, there was one Ukrainian or Russian game also that was really strange, about kicking little bolt dudes and earning fun. Oh, it was. Oh, I don't remember what it was called.
There's actually a story. It might be apocryphal, and there's a lot of like kind of uncomfortable, like, sort of vaguely like colonialist undercurrents to it. But there's a story that some filmmakers went to a very like remote, like indigenous nation in either like in North America or in Central America, and basically like they gave them cameras and like taught them like the technical terms for it, and the movies they made were vastly different because they were inventing like film techniques that were distinct from, and in some cases totally disconnected from, like American and Western like filmmaking techniques.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little harder to get something like that happening because the world is so connected now.
And also, that, the tools are internet required.
Yeah, you're going to be connected via the internet. You're going to see what other people have done. And it's not to say that people from different cultures won't come up with unique ideas, but they won't be completely disconnected from the existing canon of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we still see like unique ideas coming from people who sort of are outside the mainstream of games. Like, there's one game that came out a few years ago, and I never got around to playing it, called Continue 98765432110. Do you guys remember that game at all?
I remember it a little bit, but I don't remember what it was about.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like this weird existential game about a video game character who dies, and this is the adventure you go through before you pass on. It's really bizarre and apparently not all that great. The developer, Jason Oda, do you know what he cut his teeth on?
Mm-hmm.
So, do you guys ever remember this series of games called Super Emo Game?
Yeah.
Yeah, are you guys into, like, I know Kappa and I we're sort of into that style of like third wave emo and like punk rock and stuff like that. So this guy Jason Oda made these parodies of the emo scene that were like these bizarre platformer RPG things that made in Flash that were kind of terrible, but also
like you like have to
also,
like save Hulk Hogan or it was really weird. G.I. Joe would show up.
They're also extremely vulgar and inappropriate. And extremely offensive, but they were kind of funny in a way if you were familiar with that scene at all.
Yeah.
So, there'd be like jokes about how the lead singer of Dashboard Confessional is like a 30-foot long penis.
That came out in 2002.
That.
Holy shit, I'm old.
God, like I was playing that as like a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Shit. That's so not appropriate.
There's, I know we're coming close to the end. There's a couple other like kind of quick examples I was thinking of.
Yeah, go ahead.
One were idle games. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. Anyone?
Yeah.
Like video games where you raise idols, like Japanese idols?
No. IDLE idle. Basically, so there's this game called Wall Destroyer.
I like that. That's where your mind went to, Merve.
Yeah, like I exposed myself as the world's biggest weeb. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not going to link to the game itself in the Linkdump. I'll just give you an AV Club article on it. Basically, the gimmick is that there's a wall, and you click on the wall, and you do one piece of damage to it. And eventually, each piece of damage is equal to the amount of gold you get. So eventually you get enough gold to buy someone, like a soldier who will club the wall and do like 1 point of damage per second.
Oh, you mean shit like Cookie Clicker?
Yeah,
yes,
something like that.
Cookie Clicker, Cow Clicker. Yeah, and like there is an actual like idle games community that just make like games that are based around the idea of you having secondary like involvement in it. And it's completely insane because it's connected to nothing really, as far as I can tell. Like it's just own subculture that doesn't really interact with other games, and maybe it probably makes sense that it doesn't interact with other games.
Yeah.
You know what that kind of reminds me of?
Sorry,
like
I just have to interject. I just remembered what the name of the game that you kick little bald dudes for fun. It's called Cargo: The Quest for Gravity. It's a very strange.
I've heard of this game. Wait, I think. Holy shit! It's in my Steam library. When did this game enter my Steam library?
What an age we live in.
Where did this come from?
I know.
We live in an age where, like, I'd heard of the title and I just scrolled up and shit, it's my Steam library. I think we live in an age where we don't know where half the games we own come from.
Yeah.
Anyway, like you're talking about these incremental games. You know, this might be a little controversial. You know, it's another gaming subculture that doesn't seem to have much interaction with the rest of the game that is pretty large. Sports gamers.
Fuck.
Right?
Yeah.
I know Kappa plays some sports games, but like you don't see that much overlap between people who buy, you know, the annual NBA or the annual Madden and people who play games like, I don't know, Gone Home or
I don't know,
Stanley Parable or games like that.
I mean, yeah, probably, but I think like those sports games are huge.
Yeah, they're
like,
huge, and that's why it's not like they're outsider art, but they're sort of outside the mainstream gaming conversation.
Yeah, like they're all like every company will try to like highlight a big EA Sports game or as many as they can, but they're just like, here's a sports game, and here's our like crazy violent shooter adventure cinematic whatevers, and like never the twain shall meet. So something like Golf Story came completely out of the blue. Yeah. Which admittedly isn't really in any of those molds because it's an RPG that's also a golf game.
Overall, what's very interesting is that in 2017 we can talk about outsider art in video games, and not that long ago, video games were sort of an outsider art to you know, just the overall art
culture.
Yeah.
People didn't consider them art until. You know, maybe 90s or 2000s.
It definitely didn't hit mainstream until like mid 2000s. So
I think I made this argument on the AV Club. Ultimately, the question shouldn't be, are video games art? Because if you believe that they are, or you believe that they aren't, you're probably not going to be swayed. It should be, how do we want to talk about games in an artistic way?
Yeah, I think that is like a John Tatey quote right there. That's like his whole whatchamacallit, his whole attitude towards the whole artist games.
Yeah, like
games art debate.
Like there's no like I think that trying to state the claim is just posturing. Mm-hmm. And it kind of gets away from, I think what we're like, all of us, you know, Kappa, you and I, and Science and Merve, like none of us, all of us come to this in different ways, and all of us have different expectations or desires and what we want from games games specifically, and just the medium in general. But like, I think we're interested in exploring what that means because it's a really cool, wonderful medium, and I think as it's going to go on, we're going to see even more games. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I know this is going to be like the big concluding Aaron Sorkin whatever speech, but I just realized that there was a whole culture of outsider games on the Atari because because they didn't have licenses.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true. There's a bunch of like weird SNES games also that didn't have any licenses, and they have like bootleg cartridges, and
like,
they made games on that.
Well,
Bible story
it's like
or
literal
shit like
outsider art there.
Super Noah's Ark 3D, which is which admittedly it's hard to say that that's outsider art when that is quite literally a Doom clone.
Yeah, but it's like
weird like Bible games.
Yeah,
right?
but
Christian
you can also
games.
say like mods are kind of outsider art, right? Like Doom mods. Like there's so many Doom mods, interesting weird Doom mods that were made, and just like that. Probably has most of them never, and nobody ever saw a bunch of that stuff.
And then there's like, I feel like when you get to like different online shops, you get kind of weird cultures too. Like there were some weird fucking games on the 3DS eShop. There's weird games on Steam. There's like whole cultures of weird games on Steam.
There's weird mods for Oblivion that are kind of just head scratching. That's kind of outsider art when you think about it.
What about, you know, like you used to get, like how CD Projekt Red kind of came into being, you get all those localizations of games that are, you know, that weird gray area.
Oh, yeah, dude. Poland in the years just after the communism. Oh, my God, dude. I've played some really weird shit back in the day.
Oh,
I played some bootleg fucking Soul Reaver PlayStation 1 games translated to
The only reason I know about that
Ukrainian
is
themes.
because when I was in Iraq, it was kind of the same thing. You would buy these DVDs from the local stores, and it would almost be like they were trying to make a game on top of another game, but you were buying it to obviously play that first game. But they'd include like weird little things that they did to it that was almost like creating a game, very kind of outsidery art. But sometimes it's just them wanting to get their stuff seen, but usually it was really just them selling you Grand Theft Auto 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
That actually, there was a whole culture of like gaming in the Soviet bloc. Actually, there was a really good Super Bunny Hop video that came out, I think, a week or two ago on that, like about basically developers in East Germany who are trying to replicate the success of video games in the West, while also trying to kind of straddle a line between being what like a lot of the people wanted and being what the government kind of wanted games to be.
In Poland, censorship didn't really reach video games.
Yeah.
Because by the time, 89, the whole Berlin Wall thing and just communism just fell apart. We just were like, the games were entering an era which actually could be like, these things could be controversial, but before 89, not really. So, like, nobody gave a shit about video games back then, especially not the government. They barely paid attention to movies. And we went, some movies were really obviously criticizing the government and they didn't even really censor that. So, whatever.
Yeah.
But, interesting.
Yeah, so we've discussed a lot of interesting topics related to gaming that's sort of on the fringes or gaming that's outside the mainstream. And I think it's been a really illuminating discussion.
Yeah, it's been a
We all
trip.
have different perspectives on what's sort of outside and inside the mainstream, what's made by experts versus non-experts. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any other thoughts you'd like to share before we call this podcast to a close?
I think I'm good.
Happy Halloween!
Oh yeah, this is supposed to be kind of like Halloween.
It was a very creepy episode. I can attest to that.
I mean, we talked about some very unpleasant parts of the gaming community and parts that are just weird.
Yeah, I did say the phrase Chris Caraba's 30-foot dick on here. So
Definitely spooky
scary
material.
enough.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for being on the podcast with me, chatting about some stuff.
Yeah.
Being spooky.
Yeah. Very
you know.
spooky. Too bad you didn't keep the accent throughout the whole thing. That would have been great.
Well, if he did,
Maybe you just really got used to it, and you can't hear it anymore because you're so used to me speaking like that now.
You're still speaking in it. Okay, cool.
I'm still speaking in the accent.
Well, wait. Now the illusion is broken.
if you wanted to do with like the Bella accent, then I feel like the best way to do it is that like in the 15 minutes before the show ended, you would suddenly keel over and we'd have to replace you with like Ed Wood's chiropractor, like in Plant 9.
There we go. That's the perfect way to end.
That's exactly what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Replace me with somebody
Chiropractor. Merve, do you have a chiropractor? Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not old enough to have a chiropractor.
And he just wears a cloak to cover the top of his face, so it doesn't.
That
so it
wouldn't
sort of
make
looks
for a
like
very
you.
good podcast. That guy wouldn't be able to speak to a microphone very clearly.
Well, no,
Just replace you with another. Just replace you with another brown guy. White people can't tell brown people apart, so it's all good.
Hot take.
Hot take. Yeah, especially if this is an audio podcast. You can't tell what I look like. Anyway, on that note,
Oh God.
thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back a few weeks from now after you listen to this, and we'll be back with a less spooky episode, probably.
Yeah, it was very spooky.
any particular topic?
Any particular topic? I don't know. You guys will decide.
Good night.
Spookiest
Night,
ending of
guys.
all time. Uncertainty.